Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, and Virginia. WynnBET is now live in all these states, and the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas has finally landed in online sports betting and casino play. From boosted parlays to live in-game odds on every major sport, WynnBET gives you the tools to win. Sign up today for your risk-free $1,000 sports bet. Download the WynnBET app now or visit wynnbet.com to start winning. The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike. I'm here with Sam. Sam, the streak is finally over. The Suns lost a game for the first time in what feels like forever. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. It finally came to an end. It was going to happen eventually. Hopefully it is the catalyst to a new streak. And I think something else that interesting that happened this week was maybe, I don't know. I mean, Warriors and Suns fans were at each other's throats a lot over the course of these two games. So hopefully that gives us a nice runway to that game on Christmas and kind of builds up our expectations of what that will be. Unfortunately, as of now, not sure if Clay is going to play that game. I think it's looking unlikely that he does suit up by then. But it had to end eventually.
Yeah, people have been referring to the Suns and Warriors as a rivalry, which I guess it is.
I have to be honest. I think Suns fans are saying it more than Warriors fans are at this point.
No, I've seen it other places too. I've seen it covered, on national podcasts, calling it one of the better rivalries in the NBA right now. And I think it's entirely Chris Paul based at this point. But we talked about it on our Patreon pod. But the way I'm looking at it right now is that as Suns fans, we're parachuting into the end of a rivalry with Chris Paul and Steph Curry that we never really had. When the Suns were good last, the Warriors were not. And when the Warriors were good, the Suns were not. So this is kind of the first time that both teams are good at the same time in a very long time. So it's hard to call that a rivalry for me, but I think that the animosity, because Suns fans feel compelled to defend Chris Paul and Warriors fans feel compelled to say they're not worried about Chris Paul, I feel like from that perspective alone, there is some sort of animosity between both teams.
Yes, Warriors fans are very insistent on assuring everyone how little they think about the Suns, and they do that by continuously
talking
tweeting
about them,
about the Suns. Yeah,
exactly.
But yeah, I mean, look, hey, the Warriors played a hell of a game on what night was that? Friday. It was Friday, right? But also I went into that game with minimal expectations. I was just hoping they would keep it close. And the most predictable thing ever happened. The Suns kept it close in the first half. It was a 3-point game at halftime. The Warriors, who are the kings, we can say at this point, of the third quarter in the NBA, they just statistically are, came out and blew the doors down in the third quarter, and it wasn't a game anymore after that. But honestly, to finish that game with knowing that Mikal Bridges was okay, or at least that he's mostly okay. Maybe it'll affect his play a little bit, but that I consider that right there. That's enough of a moral victory for me coming out of that one.
Yeah, I almost want to describe it as Mikal Bridges is capable of playing, maybe not okay, but he hasn't missed a game in in the entire NBA in his whole career so far, or in college. I think that the streak goes all the way back to middle school for him. For those who don't know. So, to say that he's capable of playing doesn't mean much. He's played through every single ailment that he's had so far in his career. It's just who he is. It's on his right hand, so at this point, the question is whether or not it's going to affect either his defense or his shooting. I think shooting more than anything else. You obviously don't want him to aggravate it anymore. X-rays were negative, according to Woj, so no break or fracture or anything in his finger. It was just a dislocated pinky. I say just, like I could handle it. I'd be crying right now just recording this podcast. But remarkable that he was able to check back into that game. That was a huge win for the Suns already.
Yeah, and
since the last time we recorded, Devin Booker did get injured, though. I know we covered it on our Patreon pod, but that was the other thing that happened, and that sucks. And that had a massive effect, I think, on this second game of a back-to-back in that Warriors game. The defense was stalled out quite a bit. The offense stalled out quite a bit against the Warriors, who have one of the best defenses right now of all time, technically.
Right. There's no way to fully replace his offensive production. You have to do your best to replace it by committee, and there are certain guys that you can involve more heavily in the offense to do that, but it's just there's no other Devin Booker waiting in the wings on this team, you know? And not to mention some of the things we could say. I don't think this is really a discussion for today's pod with what we're going to be mainly focusing on, but, you know, some of the guys entering the back end of the rotation now out of necessity, it's making it harder and harder for the Suns to generate offense the way we're used to them, to seeing them do. So it's getting tough. But hopefully with Booker, you know, it's like a 5 to 10 game thing, and you can withstand that and play 500 or 500 plus basketball through that, I still think.
Yeah. I want to say that the Suns play in a system that is based on having two creators on the ball, but like that's just basketball at this point. It's not really a system that's designed to take advantage of it, although yes, technically it is. It's just that basketball works best when you have multiple creators at high levels on the floor at once. So that's just what it is. And without him, the Suns, you know, they might struggle a little bit offensively. I think the defense, even the defense, to be honest, was a little worse with Landry Shamet on the floor instead of Devin Booker. Devin Booker being much stronger, much more difficult to take advantage of in the post, and Landry Shamet just being a little smaller. So yeah, the Suns started with Landry Shamet, which is interesting, but started the season 1-3. Now 19-4, which if you told me after they started 1-3, which at that point, by the way, after you and I talking up how good they were going to be this season, I was looking in the mirror going, am I an idiot? Do I not know anything about basketball? And then, of course, they come out and start playing well again. I'm like, oh, thank God. And now they're 19-4. Obviously, 18-game win streak and then one loss to the Warriors in there. We're now over a quarter of a way through the season. Only 2 games this coming week, one against the Spurs, one against the Celtics. The Celtics we will be calling on our playback for patrons. But now I think it's a good time for you and I to take stock and just sort of talk about each player individually, what they're doing well so far, which obviously there's not going to be a lot of complaints, I think. But we can talk about what we'd like to see them focus on for the rest of the season and really try and give some sort of expectations of what we would like to see. Sound good?
Sounds good to me. Yeah, just echoing you on the whole complaints thing. Like, there will be little things that we can pick at with certain guys, but at the end of the day, how could you really complain all that much when the team is 19-4? You know, so it's I think the analysis is going to be mostly positive at this point.
Yeah, mostly positive. I think there are things that just small things that players can focus on. We'll start with the centers. Let's go by position: center, power forward, small forward, shooting guard, point guard. We'll go down the line here. Because I'd like to start with DeAndre Ayton. I think DeAndre Ayton has had a really interesting start to the season. Missed games, obviously hasn't played every single game so far this season, but has played really well, especially of late. And now I think he's in a really interesting position with Devin Booker out, in that the Suns will now be looking for more offense elsewhere. This kind of puts pressure on everyone, obviously, but DeAndre Ayton is, you know, probably the third best player on the Suns. You know, if you want to argue about if it's Mikal Bridges or DeAndre Ayton, feel free to argue. I don't think it's really important, but it can be expected that the Suns will be looking for more offense from DeAndre Ayton in the stretch without Devin Booker, which could be, you know, the next 2 games and that's it. It could be another week after that. We don't really know at this point. But what do you think, DeAndre Ayton? What do you think of his season so far?
He's had a really good season so far. And just to throw some numbers out there, last 8 games for DeAndre Ayton, 18.3 points, 10 rebounds, 1.4 assists, just a shade under a block in 31 minutes per game on 62% from the field. He's not really taking any threes. Yeah. Again, that's another thing. Here's one thing we can pick at. Free throw percentage, weirdly down for DeAndre Ayton, like a lot this year. I'm not exactly sure why that is. Obviously, we know he's not a guy who gets to the free throw line a ton, but he's just not making them this year. He's like 20% below his typical average from years 1 through 3. But with the numbers there, you see 18 points per game in the most recent stretch of games for DeAndre Ayton. Are numbers that we have not seen from him since his rookie year with Igor Kokoshkov, when really he had the opportunity to be a focal point of the offense. and he just continues to find ways to get more and more efficient. I definitely do think there are some things we can pick at. But yeah, overall it's been great. And his defense, obviously as well, I think has been really, really good so far. What do you think?
I think that he has been incredible. I think that the types of improvements that we've seen from him so far this season have me incredibly excited. It's stuff I've talked about on our last few episodes as well. But I think his work off the ball, in particular in the last few games, especially that first Warriors game on Tuesday, was exactly how you want a physical specimen, as he is, a giant who's stronger than essentially everyone he faces on the court at all times, to just dominate off the ball, get as close to the rim as possible, and then trust your guards to get you the ball. I think that for him, awareness for him and the guards to understand 3 seconds in that case, because you want him to get into the paint, right? If the pass isn't there, he needs to retreat out of the paint as quickly as possible. And if the guards aren't able to get him the ball right away, they need to call him up for the screen, of course. But the thing is if you're Chris Paul, if you're Devin Booker, when he's back, you have to reward that kind of off-ball effort from DeAndre Ayton. Now, in the last 2 games, whether it be the Detroit Pistons or the Warriors' loss, we've seen a little bit more of DeAndre Ayton catching the ball either in the baseline post area where he consistently does that fadeaway, or a little higher towards the elbow area. And they're trying to let him find ways to be effective offensively in those scenarios. For him, I think that it makes sense, right, for the Suns to give him opportunities without Devin Booker in the game to try and find ways to score offensively. That mid-range jump shot, that fadeaway, has not yet been there this season. I guess you could say same with the free throws, which is sort of a mid-range shot as well. So I'd like to see him find ways to attack from that position. And I know we've been asking this for years, but we've also been asking for other things for years that he is doing now this season, like the short roll, playmaking, whether that be attacking the basket or passing out to shooters. Like that, the types of things he's improved on offensively in other areas, I'd like to see him apply that kind of attention into the high post possessions that he does get. Or just don't do those. That's the other option. Because if it's not something that really works for him, if he's better at sealing off the ball, sprinting down the court, getting closer to the basket before he catches the ball, which is work, right? It hurts and it's hard. Then just do that instead, along with the pick and rolls. But it's tough because that hasn't quite looked great so far. But also, like, you kind of want them to figure out if it's something that he could do a little bit more consistently depending on the matchup.
Right, and I think by necessity you're going to continue to see some more of it just while Booker is out, just because it's an easy way to get offense or get shots up. But to your point, when you look at it in sum, really what we're talking about is we're talking about a difference of 2 different types of post-ups. The NBA's website, when I go to that, does not differentiate between the 2 types of post-ups, which I'll elaborate on in a second. But when you just look at how DeAndre Ayton is playing in the post this year, he's scoring 0.8 points per possession. That's 35th percentile in the NBA. That's not good for a big man. It's really not. More specifically, he's shooting 43% on all post-ups. So that should be a pretty obvious sign that that's not good. And furthermore, I will elaborate also that he has not actually been an above-average scorer in the post, according to this stat, since his rookie year under Igor Kokoshkov, back when he scored 1.03 points per possession. That was the 75th percentile. Within that, though, I want to add the context of what you're talking about. What's ruining his numbers there are the possessions against, like we saw against Draymond Green, where he's on the right or the left bank, like 15 feet out, and he just tries the turnaround immediately. He doesn't embrace the contact, and it's just not a good shot. We haven't seen it at this point. We haven't seen the evidence for it to be a good shot. But the seals, those also count as post-ups, and he's been very, very good at those all season. In fact, I think he's becoming like a master of gunning it down the floor because, as we all know, the Suns have picked up their pace quite considerably this year, and he's become a master of getting down the floor. 18, 19 seconds left on the shot clock. He's already got both feet in the paint. He can seal off a small, demands the ball, and at that point, you're Chris Paul, you're Devin Booker. You don't have a choice. You have to give him. You have to give him the ball in that situation. A, because there's a running clock down there, so obviously he can only be there for a couple seconds. But B, because you just know that's a good shot. It's obvious
might be
that's
the best shot. It might be the best shot the Suns can get.
And even when he seals in the high post, like just underneath the free throw line, like he might be 10 or 12 feet out or something, but he's still got both feet in the paint, Mike. Like we've seen him be able to catch it there and immediately go to like a hook shot, like a deeper hook shot, and he still has a pretty good rate of success there. He's got a nice touch from about 8 to 10 feet out. It's just when it turns into an actual like turnaround jumper, you know, like classic Aldridge style or something, if you want to think about like some of the power forwards of the days of old, that's when it's no longer a good shot for DeAndre Ayton. At the end of the day, his touch is good. It's not elite. And so for him, it's still about understanding the limitations and really figuring out where he can refine his offensive game the most. But he's almost there. And I really do think he continues to make a lot of progress every year. With the physicality stuff, the little things, he's been like really amazing so far this season.
Yeah, I agree. And really it just comes down to if he catches it in the high post, 15 to 18 feet away or wherever it is, if dribbling towards the basket is not going to be an option in those plays, then it's really the defense knows what's coming. It's going to be a fadeaway, just contest it as good as possible, and then fight for the rebound on the other end of that, which means he's further away from the basket, incapable of getting the offensive rebound, which he's also been excellent at so far. So if he can get closer to the basket, continue to do that. He's also been great in pick and rolls this season. Really, 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 really great offensive improvements in like the last 10 games for him. It's not always there. Like some people are listening to this going, why aren't they talking about him having a bad offensive game in the Warriors game? Well, two things on that. They were trying different things. Draymond is possibly the defensive player of the year so far. He had Draymond guarding him, and they fouled him a lot. Like they weren't really letting him get the types of attempts that he normally gets off. And that's good for the Suns offense as long as his free throws continue to get better as they have been. And for the record, when it comes to the free throw shooting, he's taken like less than 50 so far this season.
Right.
So I just assume it's going to get better. Like
I hope it's going to get better because otherwise you get into the whole annoying conversation of like the mental block.
Are they going to hack him?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a thing, too. But it's like we have to start talking about DeAndre's mental state. And it's like, oh, my God, that is so obnoxious. If we had, like,
he's been so good so far.
If we tried to talk about that. By the way, Mike, I would appreciate it if you didn't make comments like Draymond Green is the defensive player of the year. Not because you're wrong, but because we have a narrative to promote on our side of things. True. And so, you know, you're not helping the cause is all I'll say.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough with, you know, as small as Draymond is. And you could see the difference between when DeAndre Ayton got him right under the basket and when he was trying to attack him further away from the basket. Like Draymond has the strength to like post up and not get moved. But if you're already pushing him around off the ball, once you have the ball in his hands, he doesn't have the length or the height to contest. Mm-hmm. So it's all about the work he does off the ball in that scenario, which he was so good on Tuesday. And he was also good, I think, on Friday. They were just trying other things with him to see if they could get him going away from the basket a little bit, which when Devin Booker's back, I think he can go back to sealing a little bit more. Obviously, we could probably talk about DeAndre Ayton for half an hour. So let's move on for now, and we'll get more to that later. JaVale McGee has been a pretty damn good signing by James Jones so far this season. He's brought a completely different dynamic to the Suns bench. Offensive rebounding, like a true rim runner. He's unafraid to attack the basket as long as he's basically within like 10 feet of the basket. He's going to go for it. He's still JaVale McGee, I think. And we all know what that means. It means that sometimes he's going to try and dribble a little too much. It's tough to complain about him because of his role. But what do you think? What do you think about JaVale so far?
Dude, listen to these per 36 numbers real quick. I'm sorry to jump straight into the stats on this one, but like...
No, I like it.
Fucking ridiculous, dude. 22.9 points, 16 rebounds, over 5 of them are offensive, 2 blocks, 66% from the field. Yeah. JaVale McGee is averaging 15 minutes per game, and he's scoring 9.9 points, like just a tiny little sliver under double figures. He's been everything that he was advertised to be. And I think the important part there is you see in certain games, like against Golden State, that he's not, you can't just plug him into any situation and have him be a magic fix. The offensive rebounding is great.
Right.
The pick and roll scoring is great. But in those 2 games against Golden State, he played less than 10 minutes in both of those games. And we saw why, because Golden State, obviously, they go small ball all game long. So you start to see, as we head towards the playoffs, not necessarily knowing if JaVale will be as valuable, not in every matchup, but obviously having the option there. I mean, you just did not have this last year. You just did not have a guy who could go out there and give you 16 rebounds per 36. That's a rebound every 2 minutes in Dario Saric and Frank Kaminsky. There was just no option to do that. So obvious hole filled by JaVale McGee. And yeah, he's done his job.
Yeah. I think for him, just do a little less sometimes is really all it takes. And I think that's already happened. Like if you look at the first 10 games for JaVale and then the last like 14 or whatever we're at, 13, he's not trying as insane passes as he was. He's not dribbling as much from further and further away from the basket. He's just focusing on his role. And something I talked about on Twitter that I just want to bring up here too, what he's done for Cameron Payne, who we're going to talk about later, as far as being able to attack the basket with confidence that JaVale McGee is going to be there for the offensive rebound, is kind of huge, because one of the biggest things for Cameron Payne is that first step, just blowing by, if it's a switch especially, getting to the basket and getting it up on the rim as quickly as possible. Every big man is going to try to block that. Every single one. And that means if they're diving at it, they're not going to be there for the offensive rebound. That's called the Kobe assist. For those who know, Kobe will just throw it up at the rim, trusting that Shaq will be there when he was in the NBA. And that's what's happening with Cameron Payne and JaVale McGee. Dario could not do that. For everything that Dario could do, if Cameron Payne missed that layup, the other team was getting the rebound and Cameron Payne was on the floor at the other end of the basket, right? Unable to get back in transition. So adding that dynamic, an offensive rebounder there to help out Cameron Payne when he's doing his insane dives at the basket, has been huge for him and huge for JaVale McGee. It's tough to, I mean, it's just a complete home run signing by James Jones. He should be absolutely ecstatic about the performance by JaVale McGee, who's a champion, obviously, so far this season. Tough to complain there.
And who doesn't shoot threes anymore. Like he did like last year with Denver and Cleveland, shot threes. Pretty remarkable when you think like the Suns just put him in their system and said, this is what you're going to do. And I'd say it's
zero attempts. I'd say zero attempts so far.
It's working out pretty well.
Frank Kaminsky was 100% totally, completely maximized when he was playing so far. I have zero complaints. Obviously, his three-point shooting could get better. I had faith that if he continued to play, that three-point shooting would get better. He was remarkable and playing completely out of his mind, possibly the best stretch of his career. I have zero complaints. I just wanted to bring him up. Do you have anything on Frank?
I have zero complaints. I wish we had him back. That's really all it is.
Yeah. Just to give context to him, 18.9 points per 36 minutes while he played, which is insane. 8.2 rebounds. And then his assists, like a not bad 2.6 assists per 36 minutes as a center. It's pretty good. It's really, really, really fun. It was really, really fun to watch Frank Kaminsky. No update on his injury so far. We'll see what happens there. I have no idea what's going to happen. The Suns still need some depth there. I imagine they've hit up San Antonio, who they're going to play tomorrow, and asked again about Thad Young, because it would just kind of be perfect as that sort of power forward / center in certain lineups that could really eat up those minutes and play really well. So
I've got another.
See if anything happens there.
Not the topic of today's episode, really, but another name, Larry Nance Jr. Neil Olshey was just fired. I'm just bringing him up. I have a feeling I'm going to bring up his name a lot over the next few months, just saying. Anyway.
Well, that would be great. Supposedly Damian Lillard has an abdominal injury. That's a little worse than has been reported. That's what some reporting has said, so we'll see if anything happens there. Maybe he'll sit out at some point. All right, power forwards for the Suns. Let's start with Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder, it's been an interesting season for Jay Crowder. He started out the season just ice cold from three and has gotten better ever since then. He's still not quite shooting what he can shoot from three at 33%, basically making one out of every three-pointers so far this season. Was up at the top of the team in net rating, second last time I checked, which is pretty good, meaning that when he's on the floor, the Suns are basically playing at their best. continually playing defense in an interesting role for him defensively. Mikal Bridges has been on the best player on the other team basically all the time. So Jay Crowder is sort of in that off-ball help role and constantly switching on to guys when the Suns need to switch. He's been pretty good this season. He's kind of just, at this point, he is what he is. Like, he's kind of just like a robot trained to do Jay Crowder things. And I thought he's been pretty good so far. Obviously, the shooting could get better, but what do you think?
The shooting could get better. With regard to that, I want to point out, every season before last year Jay Crowder shot the hell out of the ball. If you take all of his seasons prior to that one and average them up, he was a career 34% three-point shooter. Right now, he's at 33.3%. Mm-hmm. Now, I think he benefits from a couple of things. The Chris Paul bump. I do think there is a Chris Paul bump and a Devin Booker bump, actually, too, benefiting off the gravity of playing next to elite players. But also, Jay Crowder has played next to other elite superstars before. So I think his shooting is going to get better. However, I am entirely prepared for the possibility that Jay Crowder is not going to finish this season also shooting 39% from deep. I'm just,
yeah.
It would be nice if last year was like the start of him turning a page in his career and he was going to be a close to 40% shooter from here on out. But also it might have been a little bit of an outlier, and if you get 35, 36% out of him this season, I don't think that's the end of the world. I still think he provides the leadership. He still provides the defense. So I'm basically happy with everything Jay's been doing. There are a couple things. I go back and forth. I think the biggest thing I've seen that's different out of Jay this year, I go back and forth on the floater.
I love it.
Yeah, and I'll let you say your piece in a second. I think I like it, but I'm torn on it. It's like statistically not a great shot. Here's the thing about floaters.
It's been there for him. I would love to know what the stats are on that floater for him.
I haven't actually.
I feel like it's been there.
Okay, I haven't actually pulled. I'm using my eye test here, but my eyes are. I don't believe my eyes are lying to me. I feel like I'm not seeing it go in that often. Now, here's the thing. I would rather he tries. Okay, so it's twofold. I would rather he tries to attack the basket than doesn't, because the Suns need to get some kind of rim pressure in their offense, and sometimes that means even Jay Crowder has to attack a closeout. And if he just doesn't have the leap to get up there and like dunk on a guy, which we know he doesn't, I guess in that case, I would rather he settles for a floater, because the other thing it does is you're definitely not going to get to the free throw line that way, but you also avoid unnecessary contact that sometimes leads to injuries. And especially now as we see Abdul Nader's out, Mikal Bridges getting banged up, like the Suns don't have a whole lot of wing depth. Jay Crowder needs to stay healthy. So if he's going to attack the basket and just toss up a little 8-foot floater, whatever, I guess I'm fine with it. I don't actually have faith in that shot when it goes up. I'm always like shocked when it goes in. But explain why you love it. Go ahead.
Well, he's not going to get to the rim. He doesn't have the speed to get to the rim. So when he attacks closeouts, he needs something. The pull-up jump shot is not quite... Actually, he's been surprisingly good at it, but it's not exactly a go-to move for him. And I think that so far what I've seen of the floater is that it puts enough pressure on the rim that he gets fouled shooting that shot quite a bit. Jay Crowder has figured out the hack of if you just fall on every shot attempt they call.
He does it. Yep.
They call it more than they don't. So that helps for him, but I just don't hate it. I guess I think that it's something that kind of works for him, and as he gets older, doesn't quite have the athleticism that you'd want him to have. Then I just feel like it works for him. I don't know if there's a way. Yeah, there's not a way on StatHead. I was looking up to see if there's a way to look up floaters. Unfortunately, there's not. I'll see if there's a way after this. I'm curious what he's shooting so far. But yeah, tough to complain about him. I think he's been really good so far this season. Let's move on. Cameron Johnson, another guy I think who has had an interesting season so far, also started ice cold, but is now tied with Mikal Bridges, I think, shooting. Yep, tied with Mikal Bridges as far as 3-point percentage. They're both at 40.5% from three so far. Landry Shamet now leading the team. There's multiple guys above 40% from three now on the Suns, right? They're finally getting back to their normal 3-point shooting. There's a few guys that can get a little bit better, and I think they will. But nice to see that they're doing well. Cameron Payne in the last 10 games is shooting 50. I'm sorry, Cameron Johnson, thank you, is shooting 50% from three on 5.2 attempts per game.
That's good.
So he's red hot right now, and the Suns are playing very, very well with him on the floor outside of the last Warriors game where everyone kind of got smoked. But Cameron Johnson, what do you think?
By the way, I'm looking at those 10-game splits too, and 50% from deep, amazing. Also 61% from the free throw line. I'm like, this team literally set a record last year. Did they not? Of like they were the greatest free throw shooting team of all time or whatever, and then a bunch of these guys. But Cam, I cannot complain about Cam. 12 points per game over the past 10. I think we are just seeing him in his role. It really does feel like Cam Johnson has just been finally, now that his shot, it was evading him in the first 10 games or whatever, and now he's been on fire, but he just seems to be playing in his comfort zone. And that's not a bad thing. It's just kind of more of what we've seen from Cam Johnson since the bubble. In those like Spain sets, for instance, that the Suns love to run so much in the fourth quarter, he's a killer out of those. As the initial back screener, we see Booker sometimes play that role as well, but Cam Johnson's been doing it a lot in those Warriors games. In the Pistons game, when it got down into the fourth quarter and they needed clutch buckets, it was Cam Johnson popping out for multiple threes. Other times it's just him being in the corner as a reliable, steady shooter. We know mostly what to expect out of him by now. I wouldn't say we're seeing a ton of him stepping outside of his comfort zone necessarily, but in the comfort zone, he looks good.
Yeah, and it should be said, Devin Booker went out halfway through, maybe less than halfway through that Warriors game. In the last 3 games, including that Warriors game, he had Cameron Johnson, 14, 19, and 12 points. So, playing pretty well as far as giving the offensive boost that the Suns need. I also think the Suns have just found good ways of just finding him wide open. Like, he's taken a lot of wide open threes in the last 10 games, which weren't quite there before. That is credit to him and also credit to the other guys, because I think he's always been really good at moving around behind the three-point line and finding the open spots that also include an open passing lane from the guards, which is really important. And the guards have found a good ways of finding him open. And I think that synergy between him and Landry Shamet, once Devin Booker is back, will get even better, because I think you could do some interesting things with 2 guys that could potentially be movement shooters, in theory at least, that could help the Suns in a lot of ways. So shout out to Cameron Johnson. It's nice to see him get back to normal. It was a little bit concerning to see him start a little slow, but he's had slumps in his career before, so nothing surprising there. As far as things he can do the rest of the season, I think just continue doing. And a lot of what we're going to say for some of these guys, I think, is continue doing what he's done lately, because he's found good ways to get open. Defensively, Cameron Johnson is what he is at this point. It's like I haven't seen a lot of improvement outside of from the bubble till now.
Right. But
he's really great at moving his feet and playing great team defense.
Right.
Outside of that, he's not like a one-on-one stopper. He's pretty strong. He's good at getting guys sort of stopped up in like singular plays. You just can't put him on like the best player in the other team for a whole game. So, I'm not sure that there's more potential there. I guess we'll see now that he's playing more minutes, but so far so good, I'd say.
Yeah, he's not Mikal Bridges when it comes to like being super quick with his screen navigation or whatever, but that doesn't stop the fact that you can play him in a switchable scheme, and that's really all the Suns need him to do. So I have no concerns whatsoever about Cam Johnson on the defensive end in year 3.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing really to be concerned about there. Hope to see him continue to do well without Devin Booker in the lineup. I think he's going to get quite a bit of more shots. We haven't really seen a lot of the like self-creation from him, which we started to see flashes of at the end of last season. So we'll see with Devin Booker being out if that's something that he can add back in a little bit more so far. Let's see. Who else is labeled a power forward on this team? Jalen Smith?
I don't think we need to talk about him.
We can skip him. Ish Wainwright. Ish Wainwright's been fun. He's labeled forward on Basketball Reference. I'd like to see more of him, just in general. If he's jumping over...
I think you're going to get your wish.
Yeah. If he's jumping over... Yeah. If he's jumping over Elfrid Payton in the lineups, I'm not going to be mad about that. That's not such a bad thing, especially with multiple point guards still playing on the Suns with Cameron Payne and Chris Paul. So
Ish Wainwright's per 36 numbers so far. Do you want to hear them? He's only played 21 minutes. 3 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, 1 turnover, and 10 fouls. Which sounds Sounds about right to me, honestly, based on what I've seen so far. I would like the only thing I'll say about Ish. Here's the thing: I don't have like really tangible expectations of Ish. I just think he's a really fun story, and so I'm rooting for him really hard. I will say I don't expect him to be a focal point of the offense, but in the minutes he's gotten so far, I haven't seen like a clear role for him offensively at all. Like you can't stick him in a corner because he's not a shooter. But then is he a dunker spot guy? If he is, they haven't tried that so far. And does he just set really good screens? Like I don't really understand what the
He's very wide.
He's very wide. Yeah, so I don't understand what the vision is there, but obviously that's something they're going to have to sort out depending on how much more they play him.
Yeah. He's made some good passes, I thought, just kind of rolling around some screens. So we'll see. I guess they're not going to play Chandler Hutchison anytime soon because we haven't really seen him play at all. But let's take a quick break and come back and talk about the rest of the guys on this list here. Okay, there's a few guys on the Suns labeled as small forward. Chandler Hutchison, which we just talked about, probably not going to play much. Abdel Nader, who is now injured. We don't need to really cover him. We're not sure when he's coming back or what's going on with him. Really, when we talk about wing depth for this team, really the only small forward playing right now, according to Basketball Reference, is the potential Defensive Player of the Year candidate, Mikal Bridges, who just dislocated his pinky.
It's all Mikal Bridges? Insert the meme. Always has been.
Always has been, exactly. Mikal Bridges, on defense, has stepped it up in a way that, I'll be honest, I wasn't sure was possible. I was hoping it was possible, but it's hard to really know if something like that is going to happen with a player. I think the fact that he has legitimately inserted himself into the Defensive Player of the Year conversation, whether or not you believe he's going to get it, is insane. It's really remarkable. You and I talked a lot about him this season. I think we talked about offense a lot with him because we thought there would be more opportunities for him, and the statistics offensively have been incredible for him. What we've seen instead is basically a similar offensive role to last season. I don't think his offensive role has changed much. We might see more now that Devin Booker is out for a few games. But defensively, the responsibility on his shoulders has become so much more. He's covering the best player on every other team every single night, and he's done really well doing that. It's hard to argue against that. I mean, I know you have a lot to say about Mikal Bridges. Feel free to go.
No, I love him. He's exactly what you said. First of all, he's got this monumental load. We've seen the share of raw possessions that he spends guarding the highest usage players in the NBA. That share has gone up every single season to the point where it was already great last season, but now it's just elite. He's one of those guys that you have to associate as always being on the best player on the opposing team. Even in the Suns switch-heavy scheme, obviously, you know, this is kind of the funny/stupid thing about how we covered, not us, but how everyone as a collective community covered these Warriors games this week. Is we talk about Mikal Bridges guarding Steph Curry, or Warriors fans talk about him guarding Steph Curry if they're trying to defend Steph Curry. And obviously, there were so many possessions where he really wasn't because of the switches. For instance, though, in that second game, like, I don't even have to talk about the first game with Mikal Bridges because we know that it was like a masterclass performance, the first game against Steph Curry, and he shot 4 of 21 or whatever. But then you've got the second game, the comeback, which Warriors fans are trying to brand as a 23.40% shooting performance from Steph Curry as like evidence that Mikal Bridges is a fraud on defense. Mind you, I just feel like any time that you get to that point, when you have the opposing side trying to use a 40% shooting performance from their MVP as positive propaganda, I think you've already won. I mean, case closed. But no, I mean, obviously Mikal has a long way to go before we can actually solidify a Defensive Player of the Year award. I think really it comes down to a couple things. The Suns, if you actually want him to win that award, the Suns need to be a 60-plus win team. Quite frankly, they might need to be like a 65-win team. Something insane. And continue to have a tremendous defensive rating where you can build the narrative that he's the main reason behind it. But the other thing is just how much does this conversation about event creation defense versus intangible layers of defense come into play when it comes to the voters. And what I mean by that is event creation defense is the defense we all think of. It's steals, it's blocks, it's deflections, it's
rebounds,
the obvious things.
Often.
Rebounds often. It's the obvious things that show up in the stat sheet. And to Mikhail's credit, he is getting more steals this year because as we've covered this year, Mike, the Suns are playing more aggressive. They have more faith in DeAndre Ayton, JaVale McGee, yada, yada, in the back end. And so their wings are being more aggressive, playing the passing lanes, Chris Paul too. And everyone across the board on this team seems to be racking up more steals, Mikal Bridges included. But is 1.5 steals and 0.6 blocks per game enough to win a Defensive Player of the Year award for a wing in normal times? It is not. And so to get kind of the right amount of narrative on his side, you really have to shake people, members of the national media, enough and get them to understand all of the other things he's doing when it comes to the switch, the switch communication, but also the screen navigation in all of the instances when he's not switching, when he's playing as part of a duo with DeAndre Ayton, and what are the little things that he's doing to make him plus DeAndre Ayton like, if not the absolute best pick and roll defensive duo in the NBA, then very, very close to the absolute best at this point. Yeah. So it's just tough. It's really about trying to convince a lot of people of things that they just might not be accustomed to seeing on a basketball court. Yeah. And that's why it's tough with Mikal Bridges. But like, you know, there's no stat that I can throw out there that's just like he is an all-time legend in doing this, which is
that's really that's the problem right there, because what you're talking about often with voters for these awards, they're looking at these sort of catch-all defensive metrics that favor big men. And I think the best possible thing for the narrative, if you will, that Mikal Bridges could win Defensive Player of the Year is starting a narrative that it does not make sense that we base these on a stat that ultimately will always benefit big men, because that's just what those statistics do. You know, you could argue what's more difficult, you know, being really tall, like Rudy Gobert, which ultimately that's like his best defensive, that's his best defensive skill. He's really tall with really long arms.
You're being a little bit of an asshole now.
Well, this is how it works. Yeah. But what I'm saying is the difference between being the backline of defense, which your job is to be incredibly long and incredibly tall, which is valuable, and being the guy that's at the point of attack guarding the best player on every team for extremely extended periods of time over and over and over and over again, is something that at some point voters have to take into account, regardless of if it's Mikal Bridges or if it's other defensive players, because I think that we, in some ways, have lost the plot on defense, and I've brought it up a lot recently, the difference that a single point of attack defender can make to a defensive team is massive. It's just immeasurable in the way that we currently measure defensive statistics. So, you know, I think it's incredibly important to have a backline defender that can help you out if you miss a guy. But I think that often the right point of attack defender funneling that guy directly into the big man in a way that the scheme requires is also incredibly important, and that does not show up. What shows up is the guy contesting the shot at the end of that. And it's difficult to find ways to marry those two things together. Right. And I do think that at some point, voters are going to look at themselves in the mirror and say, I don't want to vote for Rudy again.
And I think that's literally exactly what's going to happen now.
And they're going to have to make up a story as to why they don't want to do that. And I think it's going to be something similar to what I just said.
Yeah, hopefully. I think traditionally the argument about bigs versus point of attack defenders in terms of defensive value has gone something like this. Bigs are floor raisers to your defensive system. That's really what they are, because you can't take a big out of, I mean, as much as teams are trying with small ball and all of that, you know, if a big can move his feet relatively well, you can't take a big just out of the system altogether. You're always going to be driving at him. Most of the shots are going to be going over him. You can't just avoid him. Point of attack defenders, if you've got theoretically one elite, the best point of attack defender in the entire league, and you pair him with 4 terrible defenders on the court, there's not going to be that much of a floor-raising presence that he has, because you can just screen him or attempt to screen him out of every play. Theoretically, this is the idea, right? But when you're talking about not just floor-raising as a concept, but you start to get into defensive schemes, defensive systems that are actually quite good, And I'm not really using Rudy as a specific example for any reason. I'm not trying to pick on him, but like if you're talking specifically about the Jazz, who are a pretty good defensive or a great defensive team in general with multiple good defenders. Rudy's the main guy, but multiple good defenders. And then you've got the Suns as a good defensive team with multiple good defenders, and you start to get less into the concept of floor raising and more into the concept of ceiling raising. I think there is an argument in all of the small intangible stuff to start to talk about this is where having the best point of attack defender really, really does matter. And maybe you can start to build a case there for why it matters more in this case.
Yes.
But it's going to be tough.
If you right now ask Jazz fans, the smart ones, why Rudy Gobert is looked at as a problem defensively in the playoffs compared to the regular season, what they're going to tell you is that the point of attack defense on the Jazz left him out to dry more often than not, which affected how his defense was perceived because he was constantly having to make up for the point of attack defenders on the Jazz. So to your point, when you need to raise the ceiling, which is in the playoffs, right? The floor is how you get there. The ceiling is how you win. That's when they've struggled, and that's when point of attack defense becomes really, really important. We'll see if this is something that people have talked about. I've actually seen it pop up quite a bit recently from other people besides us, and we'll see if it's something that sticks, because at the very least, I think him being in the conversation gives him the kind of credit that he deserves, and it's a nice way to smoke out fans who have no idea what they're talking about by seeing how they talk about him and his defense and what he provides to a team. Shout out Mikal Bridges. We essentially, I mean, you could say offensively he could get better, and look, he's still insanely efficient, incredibly efficient so far this season, and it's hard to complain about his efficiency. I think that what I'd like to see personally is him go up in attempts and find ways to, just sort of be that guy, if you will, a little bit more so far this season. 62.8% true shooting percentage. DeAndre Ayton's is 62.9%. That's how efficient Mikal Bridges is so far to be a wing that essentially has the true shooting percentage of a finisher is remarkable. So we'll see if they do give him more attempts, which I think they will, with Devin Booker out. Really, really, really shitty time to dislocate your pinky on your shooting hand. Sure. But we'll see how that affects him going forward. All right. We're up to shooting guards here. Let's cover Landry Shamet first. I think Landry Shamet's now a starter for this team, at least for the foreseeable future. Obviously, we're going to get some sort of update on Devin Booker relatively soon. Landry Shamet's shooting percentages have gone up in a way that would blow your mind if you just searched his name on Twitter.
Yes, thank you. Yep, exactly.
He's shooting 40% from three currently, 40.6% on 4.6 attempts, which is, in my opinion, not enough, but that's more, I think, on the team than it is on him. It also, I think, is an illustration of the kind of gravity he has, because if he's not getting those shots up, often it's because guys are not leaving him, which is good for the rest of the Suns' offense. I think he's been a surprise on defense, not big enough to guard stars, right? You kind of don't want him to be guarding stars over and over and over again, but good enough, I think, at moving his feet to be a good team defender. But what do you think? What do you think of Landry Shamet so far? I know we've talked about him a lot recently.
Yeah, he's just the player, like you said, who has drawn the most unnecessary ire of the fan base. And I guess the only reasonable explanation for that is just it's the burden of expectations on his shooting percentages. Fans seem to think that if a guy is labeled as a shooter, if he misses a shot, they fucking go crazy. And I don't get it. Like, he's shooting 41% from deep. That's best really, really now. Good. Not to mention, by the way, Mike, clearly, you talked about Cam Johnson's ability to relocate earlier. And granted, Cam Johnson is good at it. But I think Landry has come in and has blown everyone else out of the water in terms of relocation ability. He's by far the best on the roster at it, in my opinion. And just over and over and over again, perfecting it over the last few games as his percentage continues to rise. I don't see how you could have any complaints. And similarly, on the defensive end, given what we knew about him going in, you didn't expect him to be like a stopper who can play in in small lineups where he's playing like the small forward and still be able to be like a stopper. You expect him to be maybe competent, and that's all you're hoping for. Yeah. And I think to that degree, he has lived up to expectations. The only thing that's a little unfortunate is you look at those shooting percentages and you see he's shooting worse on his field goal percentage than his three. That means really when he goes into the paint, I don't feel like we've seen a lot that was maybe advertised about being able to take guys off the dribble and sort of finish at the rim. I didn't expect him to be good at finishing at the rim, but just trying to create his own offense so far, he has been actually bad. I think we can say that. But the shooting, he probably gets
blocked more than anyone on the team by a pretty large amount, I'd guess.
Yeah, and I mean, look, he's a small guy, and he's not super bouncy. So what did you really expect? I guess you could say.
Here's what I would expect. I would have expected more mid-range shots. Like I think that maybe this is a result of playing on so many other sort of analytics-focused teams.
Goddamn analytics. There it is. Eddie Johnson has joined the podcast.
Yes, he's possessed my body while I talk about this. But I do think that a single dribble pull-up two-pointer is an acceptable shot by him. But I will say we haven't quite seen it enough to make that judgment, because he just hasn't really done it that much. So I'd like to see him shoot that a little bit more. Now I'm looking to see if there's a percentage on those shots for him. 10 to 16 feet, he's shooting 20%. 3 to 10 feet, 37%, which is very, very bad so far.
But he barely, to your point, he barely does it. I'm looking here. 72% of his shots this year have been threes. That's what
which
he's
is what you want.
Do.
Yeah,
that's what he's there to do. So that's the major, the majority, some might say, that might be the word in the English language, I'm not sure, the majority of his offensive load, it is a late night for me, I'm about to go to bed, is clearly coming on threes. So as long as he's taking care of that piece of the pie and like doing his business there, we know that that's what he was really ultimately brought in to do. And the rest of the accoutrements, sir, you can take or leave.
Yeah, I think so. I'd like to see him maybe try a little bit more of mid-range shots, or I think the occasional pick and roll has been kind of nice from him. Like that's not something that I've been disappointed in. They haven't done it a lot, which I think is okay. Like with this team and its makeup, it's okay to not put too much on Landry Shamet's plate right now as far as self-creation and creating for others. 1.6 assists per game, that's fine in his specific role. That's about what like Mikal Bridges is at. But in less minutes. So pretty good. Let's see. So shout out to him. Good work. Devin Booker. For a brief period of time, was leading the Suns in three-point percentage. He's now shooting over 40% from three. Started out the season after having COVID relatively inefficiently. Like he didn't play very efficient for the first 10, 15 games. And then just was scorching hot for the games after that, and was playing his best basketball when he left the Warriors game with his recurring hamstring injury. I think that if we were to have this podcast, you and I talking about this after those like first 10, 15 games, we would probably have been more critical. Personally, for me, after watching those last few games, it's tough to complain about anything that he's been doing lately. What do you think about Devin Booker so far?
Yeah, I have no reason to complain. The three-point shooting is obviously the biggest thing as you look at his kind of stat profile that's changed. Pull-up shooting, best percentage of his career at 36%. Catch and shoot threes, best percentage of his career at 44%. Our friend David Nash has obviously covered that through his newsletter, I think. And you know, I've seen other clips circulating around Twitter in general about changing the shot profile of what Booker is doing this year, spending more time in the corner. In particular, has been the big thing, right? And I think that's really been the catalyst for that. But with Booker also, I think the word so far that comes to describe his season continues to be sacrifice, which was also a word that described his season last year, as you know, he learned to share the ball with Chris Paul. It's happening even more now. Mike, I want to name some players who, through this point in the season, are averaging more touches per game than Devin Booker. And I just want to gauge your reaction. Do you mind if I do that?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Will Barton.
Oh, wow.
Killian Hayes. That's crazy.
That's surprising.
That's crazy, right? Isn't that,
Yeah.
dude? Nikhil Alexander-Walker.
Yeah.
If I just asked you to guess, where do you think Devin Booker ranks in the NBA in touches per game, which is a stat the NBA website tracks? Where do you think he ranks?
Well,
This is a top. I should have looked at where he is in scoring, like a top 20, top 15 scorer.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, maybe top. I would say the way you're wording it, I feel like it's like 75 or something around there, but I don't know. Maybe I'm going too low.
It's 92nd.
Wow.
Devin Booker, you remember, anyone who listened to our internal development episode over the summer, I brought up the stat then. Booker, obviously, like, he averaged a ton of touches per game a couple years ago under Kokoshkov, kind of out of necessity. Then Ricky Rubio comes in. He averages a few less touches per game as he learns to play with a real point guard for the first time. Then he plays with Chris Paul, Monty Williams last year, and that's the first time where there's like a real significant drop. He goes down to, I think it was 56 touches per game last season. I drew a whole comparison on the internal development episode, I remember, to Donovan Mitchell and Zach LaVine and all these guys who are considered on the same tier as Booker as star shooting guards, but who are getting the ball like 20 times more each game. And then this year, he's down to 51. 51 touches per game for Devin Booker. And who's getting those? It's not Chris Paul, right? Because we've also seen Chris Paul taking fewer shots this year. Those are touches that are going to Mikal Bridges. A couple of them are going to Cam Johnson. A couple of them are going to DeAndre Ayton. They're going to the other role players as the Suns try to learn to have an even more balanced attack that could ultimately get them over the hump. And so that is the sacrifice of Devin Booker. He could have 80 touches per game and you could still have a great offense around it. But he's just sacrificing for the better of the team so far. Yeah. And really, it's just remarkable the extent to which he's doing it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the most clutch player so far in the NBA as well. The stats are crazy. Like, no matter what you look at, it's kind of nuts. During the 18-game win streak, for example, outside of this Warriors game that he hurt himself in, we're not going to count that one since he didn't finish the game. But the Suns were outscored with him on the floor twice in all of those games. And I know they won every single one of those games, but I think it illustrates just the importance that he has to the team. And not just that, just how well the starters were playing together once it clicked. Like, they didn't look very good for the first 5 or 6 games. DeAndre Ayton went out, came back once Ayton was back. It all kind of clicked together. And they've played really well since. And Devin Booker was just on a tear the last few games. 35 points at Cleveland, 32 points at the Knicks, 30 points against Brooklyn, and then he was playing really, really well against the Warriors. Basically played the first quarter and a few minutes of the second quarter before he had to leave the game. Probably would have ended that one with close to 30 points again. One player of the week right before he was out, with the Suns being undefeated and him scoring, a lot of points for 4 games in a row. And it sucks that he's missing these games. But he's playing the best basketball of his career right now. I think that I can pretty confidently say that. The other part is, we don't talk about this often. I don't know if you and I have even brought it up. He's been pretty good defensively so far this year. He's not, similar to how we talked about Cameron Johnson.
I feel like
he's not a stopper.
I feel like we bring that up sometimes.
Yeah, I guess I personally haven't talked about it in a while. But like, when he was off the floor and Landry Shamet was in his place, defensively, you felt it. Like, you notice that Devin Booker is not there, which is not something that's really been the case before. He's been at the bottom of the league in a lot of defensive stats. I'm not sure where he's at now, and I don't care, because watching the games, we just had a diatribe about how defensive stats just don't work right now.
They do. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. I'm just not a huge fan of him.
No, yeah, you're right.
But what I have seen is more of an effort by him, more of a focus off the ball, especially as the win streak went on, because I think they started to understand what it took to win these games over and over and over again. And I think his focus became more and more locked in, more and more zeroed in. And yeah, I've been really impressed with him so far this season. No complaints. Just hope he comes back and continues to play the way he was.
The only defensive stat I need is this. Phoenix Suns 104.7 defensive rating, second in the NBA. If Devin Booker were really that much of a black hole still on defense, and playing 35 minutes a game as he does, I think you would notice it by now, seeping into the team stats. I think you would. So.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. All right, point guards. Let's just go ahead and skip Elfrid Payton.
Yeah, I don't think we need to cover it.
We don't need to talk about it. Let's talk about Cameron Payne first. We'll end the podcast with Chris Paul. Cameron Payne has been, I'll be honest, kind of rough so far this season. There have been some highs. He had his career high as far as regular season earlier this season. And then maybe a career low game, at least with the Suns, against the Warriors in this last loss, where he missed 8 shots in a row to start the game and then finally hit a few to end the game. The pull-up three-point shot has just abandoned him in a way that is relatively disappointing because it was a massive, massive weapon for the Suns. And I think with those JaVale McGee screens that he's now getting, that pull-up three would be even bigger of a weapon so far. This is one of those things where when I look at Cameron Payne's stats, I kind of think these averages are going to change as the season goes along as far as his shooting. So I'm kind of maybe, as far as my level of being worried about Cameron Payne, I'd call it relatively low so far, but not 0. Like I'm kind of worried.
Like a 3, 4?
Yeah, maybe like a 3. Yeah, maybe 4 out of 10 sounds a little too high, so I'll call it a 3. But what do you think? What do you think about Cameron Payne so far?
I might be at like a 5. I don't know. I really love Cameron Payne. He's one of my favorite. He might be my favorite Sun to personally root for, given his story. I think his shooting averages are just a blip, and I have faith, given all the work that he put in to get back into the NBA. I really believe he had to change his shooting, and I think that's going to come back. The catch and shoot, the pull-ups, I really think all of it's going to come back.
31% from 3 so far. I know. Yeah, I realize we didn't say that yet, but yeah.
I don't think it's gonna stay like that. Now he might, at this point it might be too late for him to get back over 40% again this season like he did last year, but it could stabilize to an average 36, 37, whatever. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Now, what worries me about Cam this year is not so much the shooting, it's kind of the game management, right?
Yeah.
And I think part of this is sometimes you're watching Chris Paul's backup. And so sometimes that works against him in an unfair way. And I'm trying to be as objective as I can about that bias and understand that when I see Chris Paul, who's the greatest game management guy to ever do it, when I see him check out of the game and his replacement comes in, I can't be holding him to that standard. I can't be expecting the same level of running the Sun sets flawlessly. But I just, there's a difference between, obviously Cam is the sixth man and you want a sixth man to look for his own shot. But when he drives to the rim this year, it really does look like he's just looking for his own shot to kind of a scary degree. And I think against a lot of, like you were talking about it with JaVale McGee, for instance, I'll just use that as an example. Is that part of the game plan specifically, that it's like they've talked to each other and Cam is just like, I'm going to drive, I've got that first step. I'm going to drive as quickly as possible. I'm going to throw it up there and then you're going to get the rebound, because that's understandable if that is part of the strategy.
It seems like
but
it
I'm also disappointed that you have as good of a roller as JaVale McGee, and we haven't seen more of an actual just passing Cameron Payne to JaVale McGee, alley-oop synergy between those guys. We haven't seen it. And similarly, we haven't seen Cam really passing out to shooters that much either. He's kind of just going for it. I think it works against the mediocre teams. This is the key takeaway here. I think it works against the mediocre teams, but it doesn't work against the great teams. And so I'm worried about the tendency as we head towards the playoffs. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to describe my level of worry, I'd say that I have looked up Eric Gordon's contract a few times, just out of curiosity, and been disappointed every time that there's still 2 years left on that contract, and it's not someone who's likely to be bought out anytime soon. He's got a familiarity with Chris Paul. He's a good player, and he has lots of playoff experience. The other thing with Cameron Payne, and I'm sorry, I feel like we're piling on him now. He could have a great game in the next game, but...
Yeah, he's had some amazing games this season, for the record.
So. The frustration foul, which is not always a frustration foul, it's like this, if he gets beat, he's just swiping at guys from behind and sending them to the line way too often. I think he's got to use his fouls a little smarter. He's in the game enough that he can foul at times to stop guys from scoring, but I think there's just been too many times where he's obviously not going to get a steal, and he's swiping at guys where he really shouldn't be. You got to use your fouls a little smarter than that when you're him. And I think he could do that. He definitely has the ability to do that. I think for him, it's as simple as if he gets back up to like 38% from three, this whole conversation is going to change because that makes a huge difference for him.
No, probably you're right. Although I do want to point out something just to throw another stat in there with the driving. There are 110 players in the NBA who are averaging at least 5 drives per game. Out of all those players, one of the stats that the NBA's website tracks is their pass percentage, the literal percent, the amount of times that they pass out of a drive. That could be pass to a shooter or pass to the roll man. Just don't take the shot. Of the 110 players with 5+ drives per game, Cameron Payne ranks 96th in pass percentage. He's passing on 30% of his drives. That is, obviously, it's the lowest out of anyone on the Suns. It's even lower than Devin Booker. And, for me, it's like on the nights when he's on, it's really, really fun. I think our buddy Serge on Twitter said, like, I'm going to throw him under the bus here a little bit here. He said he's giving me Leandro Barbosa vibes recently, which he said with a negative connotation because he did not like Leandro Barbosa because he's a fucking weirdo. But in kind of an interesting way, though, there is that parallel of where, like, when he's on, he's the most fun player on the court. He's racking up 20+ points in 20 minutes, and it's like nothing can go wrong for him because he's on.
Yeah.
But when those shots aren't going in, you got to rein it in at a certain point. Like, if you're passing on drives less often than Devin Booker, who's like an amazing finisher and an amazing mid-range shooter as well.
Great at getting to the line, yeah.
Sometimes you got to stop and kind of reflect and think, okay, what am I really doing here? Especially Cam is so comfortable finishing with his left hand, and it's so good, but he's not. I'm really trying not to pile on him here, so I'm sorry if this is kind of how this is sounding now, but he doesn't have like the same bag as a guy like Devin Booker, right? He just doesn't.
Yeah.
He's really fast and he's really comfortable with his left hand. But on the nights where those aren't working for him, it's obvious. And so there's not necessarily a whole lot to fall back on for him other than, okay, I'm going to use the drive to get the defense to suck in because they're still going to respect my drive. But now I have to leverage that in a way that's not just working for me, it's working for everyone else as well. And I think he understands that. And I think Monty can easily have conversations with him about that. Chris Paul can have conversations with him about that. But yeah, it's just the little things when it comes to game management. I think it's taken some time.
Yeah. 18 games in a row with him playing like he is. And we know that he can be better.
Good caveat. Yes.
Yeah. It's arguably a good place to be as far as that goes.
At the end of the day, like, I think the worst that you could possibly say about Cam Payne this season is that he's a replacement level player. Mm-hmm. And that's still, like, for a guy who makes $5.5-6 million, that's not bad at all. We know he could be a lot better based on what he did last year. So,
Yep. And he's much better than Elfrid Payton. He's much better than Elfrid Payton.
No doubt.
All right, last guy. Chris Paul, leading the NBA currently in assists. His shooting stats are actually down a little bit too. Still insanely efficient from mid-range. 3-point shot, not quite where it normally is so far for him, but it's been going up the last few games. Scoring a little less than before, but doing still relatively well as far as scoring the basket, especially in that fourth quarter when he just turns it on. Everyone knows it's coming. Nobody can stop it. Just that kind of thing for Chris Paul. Defensively, I think he's been better than he was last season, which is a surprise to me. That's just one of those things where he's able to take a little more risks. He trusts the other guys on the floor, and it's going well for him so far. Still has that rip through. He's been great. He's been great. I mean, he's just one of those guys where, in general, when things are going awry, things are going crazy, the Suns are giving up a run, he just gets to the ball, he slows it down. He's not at all phased, and he'll hit 2-3 mid-range shots in a row, and then the Suns will win. And like those 2-3 mid-range shots in a row, they might come with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter, but if you've watched every minute of that game, you're aware of the fact that those shots, even though there's 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter, were the most important shots of the game and effectively ended the game. And that's just such a luxury to have when it comes to your point guard. I mean, he's been great. He's been really fun to watch this season. And it's funny how he gets on people's nerves, and I just really enjoy him so far.
I love it. I can't imagine, this is a lie, I can't imagine how some people would be ticked off watching Chris Paul play, but I think he's one of the most fun players to watch I've ever seen. Like, he's just a living human cheat code. and everything about him this season has been amazing. Point about the rip through, by the way. Chris Paul's free throw rate, which is like the ratio of a guy's the amount of field goals he takes, or the amount of free throws he takes to the field goals he takes, right? His free throw rate is the highest it has been since the 2013-14 season against but you know where I'm going with this, but I really think this is the case. It's the highest since the 2013-14 season with the Clippers. That was almost 10 years ago, at a time when back then Chris Paul was not 100 million years old. He was actually willing to drive to the rim. And so back then he got to the free throw line because, yes, he had the mid-range shot, but he would also go for a lot more layups than he does now.
Yeah.
As everyone else's in the NBA, everyone else across the board has seen their free throw numbers go down because of the rule changes this year. Chris Paul has to be the only player who his free throw attempts are up on the season, even as his field goal attempts have gone down. He's playing slightly fewer minutes. He's taking slightly fewer shots as he eases other guys into the offense with greater roles, greater responsibilities. However, that goddamn rip-through move, dude, has gotten him in the bonus enough times that his free throw attempts are actually up on the season. And, it's really frustrating if you're a non-Suns fan, but I'm a Suns fan, so I don't give a shit. I think it's great. I think it's totally great.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I hate the call in general, but it's one of the rules, and you got to call it when it's there. And I hope it goes away eventually. But while it's here, I'm okay with Chris Paul taking advantage of it because I want the Suns to win. And
really,
that's
it's like everyone knows it's a rule. Everyone else is welcome to take advantage of it. He is the only player who does it, like consistently to the extent that he does, with the precision that he does. And so you can get mad at him, but really you should be mad at yourself, because why isn't your star player making those same reads to do the same rip-through move? Like the officials will call it for your guy too. Yeah. Your guy just isn't smart enough to do it. And those are the little things. Now I'm really going to piss off some people if some nonsense fans happen to stumble across this. But these are the little things that make the point guard the point guard.
Durant does it. Durant basically invented that move.
Yes. Okay. Durant does do it. That's a good example.
Yeah. I think that he deserves a lot of credit for proving that he can play at a faster pace. I think that's helped the Suns a lot this season. It's helped DeAndre Ayton, somebody that I think that we talked about his efficiency in transition when we did our internal development episode. But I think when we talked about pace, I think we failed to mention how much it would help him, and I think we've seen that bear out so far this season. If he could just sprint down the court, we talked about it when we talked about him earlier in this episode, but also it's helped Devin Booker. I think that Devin Booker is so fast in transition, he often gets fouled, and that's a very effective play for him. And then obviously Mikal Bridges. And for Chris Paul, it's a combination of being prepared to run when the rebound happens or a turnover happens, but also being willing to get off the ball early enough to get guys in transition who are able to attack the basket. And I think that's a change for him. It's not how he likes to play. We know a lot about Chris Paul in his career, and we know that it's not something that he wants to do, and he's adjusted his game in order to do that this season. And I hope he continues to do that even without Devin Booker on the floor, because I think it helps a lot of guys get easy shots early in the shot clock. And I just want to give him credit for that. No complaints about Chris Paul so far. I think he's doing the right thing as far as taking slightly less shots in order to let these young guys develop early in the season. And then the Suns as a team will have a really good idea of what these guys are capable of as we approach the postseason. Great stuff from Chris Paul so far. You got anything else on Chris Paul before we go?
No, I think you covered it.
All right. That's all we got for today. Quarter of the season down. Suns best record in the NBA, basically, after the Warriors lost to the Spurs, proving that back-to-backs are hard. And we got another podcast coming this Wednesday, Patreon, or sometime this early in the middle of the week. And then we will be broadcasting and playback for patrons on Friday for the game against the Celtics. We appreciate you guys. We'll be back with another podcast.
Hey.
Yes.
Keep your eyes peeled out there, because there's other stuff coming.
Yeah.
This week.
Thanks, guys.
Expect the unexpected.